We're doing laps around here.
Way there, people going by.
What are the boys doing this summer, Larry?
Miller one's working for Washington State Department of Transportation.
Full time now?
Full-time.
Going to school.
Going to school. He's taking Jim with his master's. And then my younger one's in working for BLM Hunt Falls. Yeah, he's got one more year.
Did he, the other one get his MI, master's in MI?
At Oregon.
Yeah, perfect. Nice.
And the second one's going for the same thing, I guess. And Jennifer's about 2 years behind. She's up OIT as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Made it easy for us.
You should just bought a house up there.
Yeah, she did.
It's nice that the kids get so well. I mean, it's nice to get them an education and
Yeah,
get started in life.
they did really well.
Yeah,
Justin got a good job.
Well, that's what
Construction inspection.
you do with an education, apply, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, time and so.
He's pounding rocks.
Give an input or something you want to talk about, I don't even know how to expect.
Well, basically, I mean, if you guys want to start early in the year, you start on education, basically.
And you like Oregon though? Or Washington?
I don't think he likes right where he is really. He's right out the most.
It took me 10 years to move back to here.
Yeah.
You gotta grow up a little bit to appreciate what we out here.
It's kind of a change in.
He's working on the freeway right now. It'll be easy.
In this county, depending on the fund budget.
It's elected?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Make sure you leave some of the extra here. Some of the glass.
Now we can start.
We missed you this morning.
I doubt that. I had a good time not being there.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with introductions, committee members. Maybe we'll go around the room. Most everybody knows everybody, but this way it could be at least formal on the video. So Jim Chapman.
Aaron Alba, Board Supervisor.
Warren Anderson, Planning and Building Services.
Julie Morgan, admin.
Craig Kimple, Ag Departments.
Richard Egan, CAO.
Regina Schapp, admin.
Larry Millar, Public Works.
Yvonne Smith, Health and Social Services.
Diane Winkle, auditor.
Brooke Suarez, planning and building. Jessica Valdinos, probation. Jim Branning, probation.
Bree Jeanette,
Jane Meter, sheriff's office.
Galen Norwood, Planning and Building Services.
Laura Dennis, treasurer, tax collector.
Casey Montgomery, DA. Michelle Latimer, DA.
Chris Bull, Sierra Radio.
Kevin Strudel, VSO.
John Mino, Sheriff's Office.
Jim Jones.
Come in, Kevin.
Julie Dean, Public
I have a seat for you.
Like they were fighting for record. I don't have all the changes in that we made this week. You want me to go
Maybe
down?
John will come and sit here. Okay. Well, I tell you, I'm really feeling comfortable now.
I'm feeling uncomfortable.
He's a big guy. So anyway, anyone else? Okay, Matt McFarland's in the hallway, so he can stay there.
Plenty of security.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of chairs if you'd like to come over here and sit.
Next to him.
Thank you. Fill up the table. Okay, now we're well surrounded. So anyway, we'll start off with public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay, no public comment. Approved minutes of June 21st.
So moved.
We have a motion, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion is carried. Move on to budget. Mr. Egan.
Okay, and Julie is, as we speak, printing off a draft summary of fund balances and revenue that we scrutinized a little bit, some expenditures that we've adjusted. So the way I'm approaching this is we've got the requested budget recommendations, and then I'm, as we go through the process, I'm adjusting those amounts to what we're calling a draft recommended budget, which is eventually going to be what I recommend to the Board of Supervisors, but it's in draft form, so I'm going to have a column there that's draft recommended budget. That's where all the changes are going to take place until we get to the point of making the recommendation. So, Diana here?
No, I'm hiding.
So Diana's continuing to revise the ending fund balance projections because those won't be final until another month or so.
Correct.
And so, but they have the revised proposed or expected funding balances have increased about $500,000 from last time we met, based on some things that are anticipated to come in public safety and in general fund. So that's good. We're still way apart as far as that that draft recommended budget is still I think $3 to $4 million apart, which is the gap we need to close. Having said that, we haven't incorporated a vacancy factor in any of the funds yet, which would be significant. We've had it.
They have been.
Well, they have in the most recent one, so that'll reduce that amount.
So the third column from the end is the draft, is the one that is kind of the working budget now.
Yeah, that's the working budget. But you'll see that, for example, we're now projecting the ending fund balance of general to be $500,000, ending fund balance of public safety to be $500,000. Those are significant increases. So that's and Julie, in these numbers we have not incorporated the adjustments that we made yesterday. So we went we went through the expenditure side of the equation yesterday and made some obvious adjustments that we saw in the expenditure side that may not be so obvious to you all when you see them, but they'll adjust that number to the benefit. So there's that. I don't know if Julie or Diana have anything to add on the fund balance side or
I'll just kind of refresh everybody of the process. Journal entries from departments are due at the end of this week. Those are due final transfers based on department activity. And then accounts payable and accounts receivable are due August 10th, they will be in shortly thereafter, and we should, after that, we should have a fairly close fund balance. You know what we're doing.
And Diana, all the inter-fund transfers are made in these numbers we have?
They're due, everybody's due twice in the...
Okay, so there'll be a lot of adjustment between funds.
Correct.
In the next week or so.
And, I'm assuming we'll probably have another budget meeting on the 26th. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Then I should have, before accounts payable, accounts receivable, having some balances and status and everything.
Right.
I'm meeting in Big Water on 26th.
In the morning.
I'm not going to be at that board meeting. I'll be coming back from the NACO conference, so I won't be back until probably Wednesday at the earliest, Memorial Day Thursday. So I won't be
Okay.
at the meeting
Well,
on the 26th. You'll be chairing that.
we may want to change the date of that budget committee meeting.
Yeah.
And we've got that on the agenda to do, so, well, we can talk about that when we get there.
Because originally, this meeting was going to be last week, and then the next meeting would have been next week. And because everything got moved back, because I knew we'd said earlier that we wouldn't be here that last week of July, so you'd have to probably either move it up or move it back.
Yeah, we can talk about this more when we get there, but I'm going to be gone on the 2nd, so that would be August. Let's go over that when we get there. So Julie, are we still missing budgets from a few departments, or have we gotten one?
Just one at this point, and two. I don't have two.
Okay, which ones are those?
The clerk and economic development.
So just the 112 fund budget? And all of the county clerk's budgets? Which
Yes.
is the 3 budgets. So we've just, for our purposes, we just made some assumptions in that draft.
Well, I just send her a notice and tell her that thank you for, I mean, I understand she had the big election, but the election was over a month ago, and I know she's gearing up for the next election, which will be 3 months from now. Just tell her that the numbers that you have is her budget.
Well, and I think we did. I think you emailed Julie and said in lieu of a budget request, we're going to make some assumptions. And in there. So maybe she's okay with that. We haven't heard anything differently.
Richard, on the projected balance here, you have a couple of these that are highlighted, probation, public safety. How come those are highlighted?
Those are the 3 big funds that we call either general fund or general fund supported, and that's the reason that those are highlighted.
Do we have any other questions? So this is like master control.
Yeah, that's what that is.
So that's the budget status update, so
Yeah,
keep
no,
a close eye on that.
no news from the state as far as any increased revenues.
Speaking of the state stuff, this might be, and I was talking with Diane about this before the meeting was getting started, but CSAC, I believe it was CSAC, sent out this, and I can give it to you, Richard, because I've got it on my computer at home, I think. Yeah, Senate Bill 1315, I guess it's in the process. Richard, but anyway, it kind of deals with some proposed changes in the budget schedule. Diana said it was kind of an optional thing, and we can decide that it's like a whole calendar tweaking. I'm sure it's being driven by the big urban calendar.
Right, I have seen that.
I just printed off those pages and thought it would be something that maybe...
May give us some more flexibility.
It does, and take a look at it, and maybe a future meeting, kind of as other business, if we have time, is to review either the pros and cons, or maybe it's something we need to worry about, maybe it shouldn't be, and if it is something that we need to maybe give some input, we could formulate a response that can be sent to our Assembly and Senate reps and give input on it. But if it makes our budget process easier, then obviously we want to do that, but if it gums up what we do, then we want to stay away from it. So.
Right.
Diana said that she had seen, that you've been following it too, through I guess your
Well,
social.
Tony sent it out to, I think Richard and I sent it out to them.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, let's move on. Do we have any other questions or comments on the budget status? If not, then we'll move, is there anything other under budget? If not, we'll move down to our discussion items. And so let's take up the road audit.
Oh,
We'll do that first.
we can do that.
Okay, here's, I don't have enough copies for everybody, but here's a few.
I did, I have maybe an earlier version of the agenda. Here's
Yeah, here.
Okay.
The State Controller's Office completed our audit of our road fund a couple months ago, and Diane and I met with the auditor during his exit conference. We're still waiting on the draft report, and then there'll be a follow final. I just kind of wanted to bring it to heads up here. This audit was actually from 2007 through 2015, so they were 8 years on completing their audit. But basically, they have some findings in here where I think it totals $124,699, which they have determined are paid out of the road fund, which are ineligible. Like I said, some of these go back to 2005. Some of them are, well, I'll just kind of go through there. So on the first page, it kind of talks about the audit, what they did. Starting on the second page, where they started to talk about the results of the audit. Number one there, they had ineligible expenditures, removal of railroad track. What this was it was prior to Richard's time, but there was a contractor to remove the tracks from
The window line.
And in that, the contractor was supposed to be retain ownership of the structures. And the board had decided that they'd like to keep the structures for a potential trail.
That's the bridge structures.
Bridge structures.
Yeah, because the agreement was, because there were several bridge structures along from town out to Lindell that we basically retained ownership of in exchange for removing the tracks from the 3 or 4 roadways where they had tracks. So there was a value for that and a value, so they basically paid us to remove the tracks out of our roads by giving us the right of way to those bridge structures.
Correct. And there, several of them were on county property, which there's no problem with those. State had 2 of them. They removed the one. And then this other one, I think the timing didn't match out, so we had to go in and remove it.
That was the one out by Litchfield,
By Litchfield.
across the highway.
On the
there.
state highway.
Because they took out the one up here by
36.
36, yeah.
Correct. So this was determined to be non-eligible because we didn't have an MOU with Caltrans. So it's out of our road system, so it's ineligible. So that's was their finding on that, 28,496. Second one here was survey and stuff we did for the terrace property. Again, this was a long time ago deal.
Well, there was a commitment that we'd made and was supposed to have been done back in like 1990, or it was back when the Bunyan Road was being built, and it was in the county at that time.
Right, and that's the problem now. Since that time, it converted to city and even some private. So at the time, we had a contract with a surveyor. That was actually paid out of general fund, so that was all good. But there was a balance of this $30,000 that was either road employees that did some work, or road paid for some of the contract. So that's what they determined on this one. The $30,189 was ineligible for that reason. The third one here is 18,890. This is for fiscal years 2007, 8, 8, 9, and 9, 10. These were tied into, I think there's 3 different ones. Some of it was the sheriff's, our communications tech person. Some of it was for IT department, and there was some for the Westwood Business Park. And these were basically road department employees that did work for those entities. And then number 4 is similar, the same projects. It was just prior work. They broke it down as by fiscal year when they did their audit. This was number 4 was outstanding from the prior audit. And same thing there with this 3 departments. And as they mentioned there, I think each of them, the Westwood Park I know paid some, and so did IT. So that reduced it down to the balance there, 47,024. So that's their the exit conference, and that's what we expect to probably see in our draft audit report.
So we use anything that's related to them to get a bill. If the road fund, the road department uses anything from anybody else's funds, they don't have to pay. That's how they work.
Yeah, this is basically an audit for the road fund, so yeah, that's what they're checking.
So when the road department uses a shovel that belongs to Public Works Department, that's general
Yeah,
fund,
they don't.
they think we're good neighbors. So that, I gotta tell you, for 40 years I've listened to this battle, so they're the Sacramento guys.
They watch the road funds.
And so, where did you put in your, you probably didn't have the numbers submitted in your budget request, but how do you propose we transfer this, the money? I'm assuming that they want us to transfer to the road fund.
Correct.
This amount of money. Is there any, are you just looking for a general fund contribution? Do you have any other ideas?
I don't, unless there's money left in the business park, which the business park.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, it was all general fund
Right.
work, I think.
I don't know what's in that budget, actually. I'd have to know.
That might be one source.
That might be one source.
I don't think
That's kind of a 6-to-1, half dozen the other, because we're going to transfer the balance to the general
To
fund.
yeah.
So it's 6-to-1, half dozen.
I don't think there's that much in there, though.
No, not that much. I mean, there's probably enough to cover 20,000 of it.
Well, is there a time frame by which they require that transfer?
They want a response in 15 days.
They want a response.
Once the draft comes out, they want it, the draft will come out, and then we were supposed to respond with a plan to pay it back. Whether it's in 1 year, 2 years, or whatever, we have to
So,
submit a plan. to pay
given
it
the fact that part of this number 3 dealt with business park expenses, and since we were going to transfer the business park, that was back at fund number 588, is that let's, just so that we can clearly, with these guys, show them is take whatever would be that portion of number 3 that dealt with the Westwood Business Park, to show that as being from that 588 to pay back this.
If there's enough, and I don't know if there
there's
is.
enough. I mean, up to whatever is there, and then, if not, the general fund. But I think rather than put it all in the general fund and then use the general fund to backfill the Westwood Business Park, and Chris, if anybody wants to make an issue of us closing out 588, well, we're paying that expense. I think it would be best to tie those two together.
Well, that's certainly something we can do, but as far as the plan goes, I guess I would throw out that this didn't occur over the course of 1 year. Certainly didn't occur last year or this year. So maybe we propose to the agency that we make good on half of it this fiscal year and half of it next fiscal year to absorb the.
And I think they would be good with that. They're just throughout the years without any plan or even payments really.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if they had a plan, it looks like the Westwood Park goes about 9,900.
And looks like there's 26,000 in the county business park.
So use 9,900 of it for that, and then, and that could be part of the half we paid this year, and not the half next year.
How long the audit take?
So this one was 8 years.
8 years. Go on an 8-year plan. I think that's only fair.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's not be like that.
Pennies for the road.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any objections to that, Diana, would you be the appropriate person to propose that plan, or Larry?
Well, it would come from Larry.
But she can be Larry's chief consultant.
But it probably should be approved by the board.
Okay.
Once the draft is back, it should go to the board and then be approved. Pay back.
So let's go to the board with a letter that outlines the findings and proposes a plan to split it between fiscal year 16-17 and 17-18 with the notation that the budget committee has considered it and concurs with the plan.
Sounds good.
Any other questions on that?
I think Larry should send the road fund Bill here this time, and all of our time.
Oh, he does.
Yep.
Should we get on to the fun stuff?
Reclassification reorganization. This is the main item for today.
So Julie's going to pass out a summary of the reclassification requests by department. Maybe I'll let everybody get that. Take a look at it. And I think at a prior meeting, I believe it was a budget committee meeting, we kind of went through, everybody went through their pitch, so to speak, for their reclassifications. As I've looked at these things, it becomes apparent to me they come from all different viewpoints. Some of them are simply just market-driven requests that stem from not being able to recruit, or the sense that people aren't being paid adequately, and that that's what's precipitating the request. In other cases, there's real changes in duties, scopes of duties, positions that the incumbents are in. Probably the most pronounced, I think, of all of them is, and that maybe we'll just look directly at that, is the Sheriff's Department, who clearly there's clearly a demonstrated recruitment retention issue in those positions. Number of perennial vacancies in the department that need to be addressed. The sheriff's been very, actually quite patient, I think, with us in trying to resolve this, because he wants to come up with a long-term solution that we can implement, and he understands the constraints that we're under. But I think that's probably the first place to focus, and I think we ought to look at maybe making some significant changes, but phasing them in over maybe the next 2 fiscal years, rather than just making a classification change immediately. And I think I'm open to input on this, but I think that will at least send the message that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There's some increases in it, but I'd like to get input from, especially the board and the departments on that before we make a recommendation. But we need to look at this holistically, but I think department by department as well, and I think the Sheriff's Department is as good as any to start, because of the serious vacancies we have there. So, does the department have any? I guess I should preface that by saying I don't have any. After looking through this, I don't have any heartburn with the magnitude of the changes. I think we could argue maybe a range here or a range there, but I think they're generally consistent that reasonable minds could disagree slightly on it, but I don't see any real problems there.
Richard, we put considerable time, obviously, into those job descriptions in that packet that we sent to you and the budget committee, to really try and identify the true evolution of some of those jobs. And we really, we didn't look at any of those just from a market standpoint. We're not competing in the compared to our neighbors. We really did look at those from what was the job, what is the job, and if you look at those at the job descriptions, I think it really lines out. Here are the new. Here are the changes. Here are the things that really have caused it to be where we asked or recommended.
Right. And one thing I'll point out too that I really like in this is that if you look at probation and sheriff, there's always been this kind of disparity, I think, between correctional officers and probation. What do we call that? The counselors in the juvenile hall. And I think this, the proposed ranges would bring those in sync. Is that, or closer to in sync, although there's different
You know, we had to do a lot of
bargaining
cross
units.
comparisons because those salary tables are different.
Mhm.
So UPEC is different than POA, which
Yeah.
is different than POB, which is different. So we tried to draw comparisons to those like
Right.
jobs.
But, and I think to the extent that we can, those two classifications, we should try to make similar, you know, even if that means that a range 18 in UPEC versus a range whatever in POA, but I think we should try to make the composite compensation as close as we can. And I know, last meeting we had some discussion about the difficulties of each, and they're definitely unique positions but they're in their own way. I don't think one is more, my analysis, I don't think one's more difficult than another. They're different for sure. But I think we ought to try to make those similar.
So Richard, just for my clarification, so like, we're looking at the sheriff, you go from correctional clerk to 10 into a correctional technician to a 14. If you want to phase this in over 2 years, it would be a correctional technician at a 12, so that would cut down your expected increase by half, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so assuming those things, and we would go to say 12 in 16, 17, and a 14 in 17, 18.
Just to clarify for myself,
Sure.
are you saying that the correctional officers that work at the jail are performing the same duties that a correctional officer at the juvenile hall is doing?
No, not at all. No. Very different job descriptions, different duties. But I think, much like many positions throughout the county, you might have a range 17 in public works, you might have a range 17 in the tax collector's office, you might have a range 17 at the fair. I think there should be some parity in terms of those positions. And I stand to be corrected, but that's my analysis of it.
Well, just to
Disagree, let me know.
reiterate what the undersheriff said a couple weeks ago, we're not going to get into a job description with Jennifer, but I do think they're different jobs, and I understand what you're saying, Richard, as far as developing some parity. But again, I think John did a great job a couple of weeks ago outlining the extreme change that we've had in that jail since 2011. And again, it's not going to degrade or try and say the correctional counselor's job is easier or anything else, but they are two different positions. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they absolutely are. I don't disagree.
Richard, the one thing I have a question for you, if you're trying to do this in 2 steps, is that if people are in those positions already, they're at different steps within those, the 12, like, they may already be at 10E. So if you take them up to 12, there may be very little raise, if any raise. So
Yeah.
those are things you
Unless
have
they
to
go
consider.
Let's go over that. So in a classic reclassification, if somebody goes from let's say they're at a 10 C and their position's reclassified to a 12. So
So they go from a 10C to a 12C.
Yeah.
yes. Or well, actually, wait a minute. That's not correct. They would go to a 12. They would go to the next range above. So that would be a 12A or B, right? So they go up 5%, but then they'd have those other 4 steps. Steps ahead of them. Does that make sense? So let's just say you're at a 10B and you get reclassified to an 11. You'd go to an 11A, which would be the same,
Would be the same.
same pay. Or you would go to an 11B, which would be 5% more. But you wouldn't go C to C.
But if you're jumping it to,
So you'd go to either the lower of the range. So if you're say you're a 10A and you go to a 12, you go to a 12A, which would be a 10% raise, but you're in the 12 step. But if you're at 12.
So basically, you're saying you're going to a 12, instead of being 5% budget.
Yes, you go up 5% as long as that wasn't, if the range was like in this one where it's going up 4 ranges, you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna go up more than one step because they're going up 4 ranges.
So the only difficulty though, Richard, is if I'm a 17A and you're a 17B and we both get reclassed 10%, I'm gonna get 10 and you're gonna get 5. And I don't think
Right.
that's exactly how I mean, clearly that's what we do on a promotion. They go to the next like range with about a 5% differential, but if we have somebody, we don't have very many, but if we have somebody that's a C,
Right.
Versus somebody who's been here 5 minutes, that person who's been here 5 minutes will get the full weight of the reclass immediately. The person who's actually been here a little bit longer, and by default we're getting a little higher levels of service, we have a lot more expertise, a lot more experience. Really, let's say in that case, then that really breaks it out to not a 2-year implementation, but all in all likelihood a 4.
Right.
I think the problem,
I hear what you're saying. But
I think the problem that you might want to try to address it from is if you're just making, the rules that you outlined, I think, are the rules that are there. So when you have a position here or a position there, and you're making like a spot decision, and I think the rules have to function something like that. We're talking about a whole unit, which is everybody, not just a spot one. And I think, given that, if we're going to make this, I felt for quite a long time and have argued unsuccessfully that we need kind of like a major overhaul over the whole structure. I mean, I'm glad to see that we're proposing with this going back, creating a deputy sheriff 1-2, kind of a format where you have kind of basically the entry-level position and then one that is designed to recognize somebody who has the longevity. And so you kind of create the opportunity for that kind of like staircase or stair ladders within it. And that used to exist years ago, but sometime back in the 90s, as they kind of reshuffle the thing, because it's all designed to try to boost the salaries and stuff, that went away and we kind of went to just the one size. So,
and here's the dollars and cents of it is, though, if you take, and we can do it, I agree, we can do it however we want to.
Well, I think
board
if we do this, we do it based on the fact that we're going to do it, not based upon using some, administrative rule we've had in the past. If we're just taking a spot change, like we're going to take Regina, we're going to move her from this box to that box, then I think those rules that we have in place make sense, but not when you take the whole department and do it. Now, in the case of Regina, she is the whole department. So.
But in the case of these, the very significant reclassifications where we're going from a 10 to a 14, and if you're to take somebody from whatever place they are in the range from a 10 to a 14, 10C to a 14C, that's a 20% range plus 5% of a step increase. That's a 25% increase in a year. That's budget busting.
Well, but the 5% increase, on top of that, I mean, if we do this, I think some of the conventional rules that says that you can get an extra 5% by making that, that part is suspended.
No, I just mean the 5% by being in
if you're
position for
if you're 3 months on step C and you're going to have 9 months on step D, is where you fall in the 12-month cycle, then theoretically you probably could wind up with a 25% increase. And we have to, maybe consider how you can modify that.
So we're gonna have the he got this, she didn't get that, she got this.
Well,
no matter how we do this, so I don't think that should drive.
It's
how
just the
we come
correctional
about
clerk, correctional technician on the sheriff's side where you see a 10 to 14. Everybody else is basically like a 2% bump, and maybe in one case
Well,
there's
there's
1%.
15 to an 18, there's 15 to a 17, 17, 19, 20, 22. And if you go through the whole list, there are a number of
But
them.
within the sheriff's department, the primary one along that line, it may be that's where the two-year phase-in would be more appropriate, because especially when you're going to be making that big of a jump. But I think we just need to kind of sort that out and try to do as much of it without modifying it.
I would favor a situation where we redo the classifications, and then make the situation to where everyone gets, you know, as close to one step increase immediately as, you know, up to the next one in that range, whatever that is, rather than going up, you know, 20-25% in 1 year.
Richard, and that's going to be hard because the sheriff shared a story with me here recently. When he got promoted, he was a week away from his anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1 week he would have got his step, but he got promoted before. So all they had to do was wait 4 days, he would have got his annual, and then he would have got that. So I can see where that's, you know, some people are really going to benefit, but some people might not get hardly any benefit. So
I don't think the bargaining units, I mean, I'm not speaking for the bargaining units, but I don't think the bargaining units would go for suspending the annual merit increase.
Probably not.
Right?
They won't.
Speak for one.
Because, you know, I just don't think it's going to happen, so.
So, Richard, on looking at the sheriff's department, on the sheriff sergeants, you move up to 21 or 22, and then you have a dollar figure over there. Is that dollar figure based on the 22 or 21?
I think that's 21. But I better double check that. I think
When we did ours, Richard, we split it. We made it, the spreadsheet we sent you was based upon a 21 and a half, basically, because...
we just took that number then. That's what it was.
Okay. Because what happened is with the way the bargaining rolled out last time, once the sergeants got hit with that impasse tax, that created some compaction there, and it's going to be really hard. I mean, we've already hit a spot where, you know, we have deputies that are saying, I don't, you know.
So we
hard
could
to
add
compete
another
for sergeant.
We could add another 12,000 in the cost.
But I think there's a middle ground in there. I don't think it has to be a 22.
As far as probation goes, I know that the last time that you had asked me to bring you back some numbers regarding the amount of work that we do and regarding where we're at. And so as you can see, kind of over, here you go, Richard.
Thank you.
As you can see, over the past 3 years, we really have done the same amount of work with less people. So we've really made a decrease and a reduction in the number of deputy probation officers, correction officers, and everything else that we have, but we still have the same amount of work that we're doing. So that does kind of support some of the backup documentation that I had brought to the previous meeting to be able to show where we're currently at.
This is good, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was part of what we were asking for. Wasn't that we didn't believe you would be able to needed to have the qualification to provide backup.
And that's why I wanted to go ahead and put it down so that you would have that. Thank you.
Well, I think we need to develop the concept of how we're going to implement this. And I think this is the heart of what we need to resolve, which is how are we going to implement increases? Are we going to do it all at once? Are we going to do it over time? Are we going to do it the same for everybody? Are we going to do it different based on classification or how long you've been here or whatever?
Well, why don't you throw out what you would like? You know, the board expects you to provide leadership in terms of administration. So you give me your best scenario.
Well, so this is how I would propose that we do this, and not just for the sheriff's department, but for all of them. What we do is that we do it over 2 years, half and half, and whatever the increase is. We take the person's old classification, their anniversary date remains whatever their anniversary date is. They go up to the lesser of the A range of the new, or A step of the new range, or they go up to a minimum of a 5% increase in wherever that falls in the step and range of the new classification. And I'm looking to the auditor and payroll for ease of implementation as well, because I don't want to make this any more complicated than we have to. But I think that's the best way to try to mitigate the sheer dollars that we're going to be looking at here. And then we would implement the same thing the next year. There wouldn't be any reshuffling of the steps really. People would get their annual merit increase or whatever they're entitled to. Plus the next year they would go up to the next next half of that.
A question, and John, on the correctional clerks, that you want to go to correctional steps, are you changing the requirements at all as far as
Yes.
hiring requirements?
So it's definitely a change in a job description that would require them to staff control boards. It would also require them to help with head counts. It's really hard when we just don't have enough women in the building. We have to have women to go count the women. So yes, now we try and clearly define that we're not going to put them in use of force, this kind of hand-to-hand combat situations, but we would have to have them in a spot where they might be eyeballs to eyeballs with an inmate.
So are the requirements for the position changing from what they were at the clerk to be qualified to be hired?
No, but their duties themselves would be.
So the qualifications are still the same, just the duties to be changed?
Right. And then we did, at least preliminarily, Richard, we did at least in a draft form, talk with Steve Allen and sent him. We're going to be, obviously sharing with him that if this was something that got traction, that at some point clearly the admin would have to talk with them about the changes in job descriptions that would really precipitate any change in pay.
Certainly, and the way we would approach that is any of these changes are going to require immediate conferring with bargaining units, and so we would meet and confer with them on a package situation, which reclassifications and changes in job description.
To get to that process, and I would say that I would be totally supportive of your recommendation, and in terms of going back to the board, but then I'm not sure where Aaron would stand on it, but I'd like to have you, if you could take this and come up with a spreadsheet that would actually plot out and define what that is, in other terms of quantifying exactly what it is there. I mean, you've got, let's see here, sheriff sergeants, you've got 7.0 as your FTA, they're now at 20, you go to 21 or 22, and you're projecting that out to be 43,588. Implement your plan, you got to have year A, year B,
right,
and then go through each one of those 7 and determine where their steps are, how that might translate in terms of either this A step of a new range or a minimum of 5%, figure out what that would be so we can actually know what those numbers are. I mean, it takes a little tedious work on somebody's part, but I think once you have that, you can have a quantification, because that's what basically you're going to need to go back to the board as well as to the bargaining unit.
Right, and I just wanted to have this discussion first, because we could do a million different scenarios of how we're going to implement this, but if we have kind of a consensus of how to
And I consider that to be kind of like a minimum approach. If for some reason all the budgetary things fall into place and we all of a sudden have an extra pot of money here, an extra pot of money there, or somebody gives up a chunk of money and we could fund what would be theoretically implementing the full thing, full force first year, I doubt that's going to fall heavy.
Well, let me be the wet blanket. I think we're more going to be looking at what positions are we going to cut in order to raise
Well,
those
and
positions.
if that's the dynamics, then we have that as to converse them. At least then, decisions are made based upon what the known facts are, rather than just kind of dealing with it in theory. So I think we need to get to that point if we can between now and when we have our next meeting.
Okay.
Because I think that that's something that we need to make some progress and move forward on this.
Okay. Now, like I said, we've gone in detail through the probation and sheriff's department. We wanted to. It's pretty much detail. I've been through it in detail. A lot of the rest of them, they all have their arguments in favor and against, but they're, in terms of the sheer evidence that we've got a recruitment and retention problem that's not nearly as strong as it is with sheriff and probation. In a lot of cases, they're like I mentioned earlier, they're the market-driven ones. We think people should make more, so we want to reclassify.
Well, most of those I look at it as kind of more of a spot adjustment rather than a wholesale makeover of that whole unit. And those are, I think, two different things.
Then maybe in the next meeting, because I know we all have a meeting to get to in about 5 minutes, maybe at the next meeting we could go through, and I'll certainly have some information on, like we talked about on probation and sheriff, but we could go through the other departments, maybe position by position, and go through those.
Can you have the dollar numbers for what those, when we go through those other departments, so that we can, when we're having that discussion, it's not in general, we can actually be looking at what the dollar amounts really amount to?
In the same menu that we...
Same menus you've done with the two big departments.
What do you think, Julie?
She can do it.
The costs that I projected are based on who's currently in the positions and where a 5% would go. That's how I set it up. So these to me are costs.
So we would just need to divide this into year 1, year 2.
Yes. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing you say is you want to know based on who I see that's in there. The only difficulty would be that as people move around, but that is what it is.
Okay. So these numbers here reflect the recommendation that Richard made. So you anticipated what his recommendation is going to be?
I just took who was in those positions and
really
projected
like
what it would be if they moved.
What I'd like to have you do is to verify and reconcile if it's the same grade, if there's a variation, make the adjustment for the variation. But when we come back and have the follow-up discussion, let's have it on a very specific breakdown.
And I don't think it's going to be as simple as just dividing increase in column in half, because the first year is going to have some
And ours, Richard, assumed if you did a full implementation, E to E, or C to C, or E to D, person by person, so.
Right, but, and Julie,
I did person by person.
You corrected that. She changed that. So it'd be a C to B, or C,
Right.
What a 5%? Yes.
Yeah, we should compare sheets,
Okay.
Julie, just to make sure
Well,
we're.
Let's do that.
Why don't you guys plan on doing that between now and the next meeting, and that way there we can have a reconciliation and we can have a true set of numbers that everybody has confidence in, so that when it gets turned over to Diana, she knows what's going to be there, because she's the one that's going to make that happen.
Okay. So do we want to meet next week?
I was going to say we could meet next week, it's fair week, but the fair doesn't get going until later in the week, so I would not be adverse to having a meeting.
Tuesday afternoon.
I won't have additional information for fund balance coming forward.
No, we don't need
Maybe
that.
we could meet just for the purpose of reclassification.
Let's focus just on the reclassification stuff. If Julie and you guys could get that, I gives you this week to get that squared away. I'd be in favor of that. How does that work for you, Aaron?
That worked fine.
Okay.
Julie, if you need some help, let me know.
And that would free us up to the 26th.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
going to Big Valley.
And then Richard can come up with the strategy for the meeting to follow next week's meeting. The
What
next-
meeting were you going to be gone?
The 26th.
I'm gone the 26th.
Okay.
And that's the one we'll meet.
Let's do that. Let's adopt the budget on the 26th.
You want to know something? Julie?
That'd be kind of good.
But then I wouldn't have to break my perfect record of voting no on the budget, because I wouldn't be here. And if I voted yes, it would break my record.
And you voted yes once.
I know, I voted yes more than once. But I voted no a lot of times too.
Is it over?
To determine whether I wear a Lone Ranger tie or a